Right now, sitting under the sink in almost every home is a really common, inexpensive cleaning product that can cause like thousands of dollars in catastrophic damage to a boat in less than an hour.
Oh, absolutely. And if you own a marine toilet, I guarantee you have been severely tempted to use it at some point.
Severely tempted. The urge usually hits right when you're out on the water, right? The sun is setting, the breeze is perfect, and someone comes up from below deck to announce that the head just isn't flushing.
Yeah, it is the ultimate mood killer.
Hmm.
Honestly, cleaning and maintaining a marine sanitation system is kind of the dark underbelly of the sailing dream,
It is the chore everyone avoids.
which is precisely why a tiny, minor mechanical hiccup routinely snowballs into a full-blown plumbing disaster.
Mhm.
People avoid it because it feels intimidating and, frankly, really unsanitary.
Totally.
But a marine toilet isn't just a porcelain bowl. It's a highly engineered piece of machinery that operates in a super hostile environment.
Well, today we are taking a massive stack of maintenance manuals, technical bulletins, and troubleshooting guides specifically for Jabsco marine toilets. And we're going to completely flip the script on this dreaded task.
I love that.
Yeah, we are turning this deeply icky chore into a masterclass on marine mechanics and chemistry. Because whether you're a seasoned sailor prepping for a huge offshore passage or just a weekend boater dreading a mid-July breakdown, mastering these hidden, non-obvious secrets of your boat's plumbing is going to save you.
Oh, it'll save you serious money and hours of frustrating labor.
And some very public embarrassment on the water, honestly.
Right. So the first barrier to overcome is simply understanding the operational environment. The source material is adamant about step one. Like before you unthread a single bolt or inspect a single valve, you must locate and close the seacock.
Right, and for anyone who hasn't spent hours contorted in a bilge, the seacock is essentially this heavy-duty brass or bronze valve, and it dictates water flow through a literal physical hole in the bottom of your boat's hull.
Exactly. It's usually hiding behind the toilet or, under a floorboard.
So you close that valve to prevent the ocean from pouring in while you work, and then you give the pump handle a few dry flushes just to push the remaining water out of the bowl. And suddenly, your battlefield is exposed.
Yeah, you're ready to work.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if I'm at home or even in my RV and I'm facing a stained, foul-smelling toilet bowl, my immediate instinct is to deploy the heavy artillery.
Grab a bleach.
Grab the bleach. I'd grab a bottle of heavy-duty bleach or some caustic bathroom gel and just let it obliterate the mess. Why is that standard domestic reflex considered the ultimate unforgivable sin on a boat?
It really comes down to material science. I mean, household plumbing relies on gravity, PVC pipes, and relatively static wax rings. They don't move much.
Right.
A marine toilet, however, relies on this highly complex dynamic series of synthetic rubber components. We're talking about nitrile and neoprene blends that have to physically flex, expand, and contract constantly to create a mechanical vacuum.
Because that vacuum is what forces the waste against gravity, right? And against the external water pressure of the ocean sitting right outside the hull.
Precisely.
So the rubber isn't just a passive seal, it's the actual engine of the flush.
Yes, that's exactly it. And those specific synthetic rubbers are manufactured with chemical plasticizers, but that's what gives them that vital elasticity.
Okay.
But bleach, muriatic acid, and heavy-duty bathroom cleaners contain aggressive halogens and caustic compounds. When you introduce chlorine bleach to a marine toilet, it causes a rapid chemical reaction that aggressively leaches those plasticizers right out of the synthetic rubber.
Oh, wow. So it's basically destroying the flexibility.
The material literally ages years in a matter of minutes.
You know, I've always noticed that when people use bleach on older boats, the pump handle feels incredibly stiff just a few days later.
Yeah, that is the chemical degradation happening in real time. Your seals crack, your vital valves become brittle, and suddenly the pump just can't hold a prime. You've essentially chemically destroyed your own plumbing from the inside out.
Just by trying to clean it.
Right. And furthermore, those harsh chemicals permanently etch the protective glaze on the porcelain bowl itself.
Oh, I didn't even think about the bowl.
Yeah, once that microscopic glass-like finish is scratched by heavy acids, the porcelain becomes porous. It transforms into a magnet for future stains and bacteria. So it's going to smell worse and be infinitely harder to clean the next time.
Wow. Okay, so that fundamentally changes how we need to approach this. If bleach and harsh acids are the villains destroying the elasticity of our system, what is the alternative?
Man.
Because the guides actually lay out a surprisingly gentle chemical arsenal. Like, the absolute hero of the marine head is just distilled white vinegar.
Oh, acetic acid is the undisputed champion here, and specifically because of what it targets. It doesn't attack the synthetic rubber. It targets the environmental buildup.
And the instructions are incredibly specific about this. You pour a generous amount of white vinegar into the bowl, pump it just enough to get it into the internal valves, and then you leave it completely alone for an hour.
You're not aggressively scrubbing at all.
Right. You are letting the mild acetic acid chemically react with the hard water calcium and that crystallized salt scale that builds up on the internal mechanisms. It dissolves the minerals while leaving the rubber entirely intact.
And for tough surface stains, the manuals actually recommend just a simple baking soda paste.
What if it's really bad, though? Like a boat that's been ignored for a couple of seasons?
If a vessel has been neglected and has severe stubborn mineral calcification, you can utilize a very brief application of a product like CLR, calcium lime and rust remover.
Okay.
But the operative word is brief. You cannot let it sit, and you must vigorously flush the system with fresh water immediately afterward to neutralize any lingering chemical activity.
Got it. So vinegar dissolves the calcium scale beautifully, but that creates a new mechanical challenge because once you strip away all that mineral buildup, you've also stripped away any natural slickness inside the pump housing. If you leave it like that, you have a surgically clean but highly frictional environment. The rubber will physically tear itself apart just from the friction of the pump plunging up and down. We have to mechanically lubricate it.
Yes, lubrication is critical.
Here's where it gets really interesting. To understand how to lubricate this machine, we have to look at the absolute mechanical heartbeat of the toilet, the brilliantly named Joker valve.
Oh, the Joker valve.
Yeah.
It is easily the most critical and honestly most frequently misunderstood component in the entire sanitation system.
I look at the Joker valve like the master heart valve of the plumbing. Physically, it looks a bit like a rubber tube that has been pinched flat at one end, almost like a duck's bill.
Yep, that's exactly what it looks like.
And it sits right in the discharge line. When you pump the handle, the positive pressure of the wastewater forces those rubber lips open so the water can escape. But the second you stop pumping, the back pressure from the ocean water sitting in the discharge hose forces those rubber lips to snap tightly shut.
It is the ultimate one-way gatekeeper. It's what prevents contaminated foul water from flowing backward into your pristine bowl.
Right.
Which means that when a boater complains about a mysterious, unexplainable odor creeping into the cabin, 9 times out of 10, they are smelling a failing Joker valve.
Uh-huh.
If those rubber lips lose their elasticity and fail to close completely, contaminated water just slowly seeps back into the base of the toilet. But because this valve is constantly expanding and contracting with every single pump, it requires a highly specific lubrication protocol to survive all that friction.
Meaning you can't just blast WD-40 down the pipe and hope for the best.
Definitely not. What's fascinating here is the precise division of labor in the lubricants. You were dealing with 2 entirely different types of friction.
Okay, break that down.
So, for the pump handle shaft and the plunger, seal the rigid mechanical areas where plastic or metal rubs against rubber. You must use a Teflon or PTFE-based marine grease. But for the internal, purely rubber components, like the duckbill of the Joker valve, thick grease is a huge liability. For those, you apply a pure silicone spray. That keeps the rubber supple without adding thick, sticky mass.
And the manuals emphasize something I started calling the Goldilocks rule of lubrication, because it has to be perfectly balanced. If you panic and apply too much marine grease to that pump shaft, it violently backfires.
Oh, it's a mess.
Yeah. Excess grease inside a plumbing tube basically turns into an industrial adhesive. It grabs onto floating hair, dirt, crystallized salt. Suddenly, you've built a restrictive sludge ball inside your own pipes, creating massive mechanical resistance where you are actively trying to eliminate it.
Yeah, you're just making the problem worse.
The technical guide specifically instructs you to apply the grease and then wipe the excess off with a paper towel. The goal is just a microscopic film, just enough so the Jabsco twist handle glides like butter.
And we really must highlight a massive catastrophic mistake that boaters make constantly here. Under no circumstances should you ever use Vaseline or any petroleum-based jelly to lubricate a marine toilet.
I assume the petroleum has some sort of chemical reaction with the nitrile rubber.
A severe one. Petroleum actively penetrates and breaks down the molecular structure of the synthetic elastomers used in marine sanitation.
It melts them.
Basically,
Yeah.
it causes the internal seals to chemically swell to almost twice their size. They bloat, they lose their structural integrity, and then they rot and disintegrate.
Wow.
Using Vaseline is essentially guaranteeing a catastrophic pump failure within a matter of weeks.
Okay, so we've mastered the chemistry, banishing the bleach to save our plasticizers and relying on acetic acid to dissolve the scale. And we understand the physics of lubrication, applying a microfilm of marine grease and strictly avoiding petroleum.
Right.
But even with perfect maintenance, the ocean environment is brutal, and things will eventually wear out. The source material serves as an incredible diagnostic manual for when things start acting up.
Okay.
So let's move away from just listing symptoms and actually diagnose a real-world nightmare.
They hit me.
Picture this. You're anchored off the coast for a long weekend. A guest uses the head, they pump the handle, and the water instantly drains out of the bowl before they've even finished flushing. The bowl simply refuses to hold water.
In that scenario, the prime suspect is the flap valve. It's located at the very base of the toilet pump. It's essentially a weighted piece of rubber designed to act as a trapdoor.
Okay.
When water drains instantly, it means that flap valve has either become stiffened by a heavy layer of calcium, or a physical piece of debris is wedged underneath it, holding the trapdoor open.
That makes sense.
The diagnosis is really straightforward. You open the base, clean the scale off the flap, or just replace the rubber if it has lost its flexibility.
Okay, different scenario. You go to flush, and pumping the handle feels like you are trying to push a brick through wet concrete. It's incredibly stiff, but strangely, the flushing action itself is weak. There is no power drawing the water down.
Yeah, that combination points to a failure in the vacuum system. First, you inspect the very bottom of the pump cylinder for a physical blockage. Calcified scale often breaks off and jams the intake.
Oh, right.
But if that area is clear, your joker valve has failed. The constant pressure has permanently stretched the duckbill lips wide open.
So it can't create suction.
Exactly. Because the lips won't close, the pump cannot create the negative pressure required to draw new water in, nor the positive pressure to forcefully push waste out. You're literally just churning water back and forth in the pipe.
Okay, what about the most visually terrifying symptom? You walk into the head, and there is a slow, steady puddle of questionable water pooling around the base of the pump assembly.
Yeah, that's never fun. But before you panic, check the simplest variable first, the mounting bolts.
Just the bolts.
Yeah. Bolts vibrate constantly, and those vibrations back the bolts out over time, breaking the compression seal. If tightening the bolts doesn't stop the leak, then you are looking at a degraded main pump seal or a failed O-ring on the shaft, which requires a service kit to replace.
Got it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, all of these terrifying scenarios are entirely avoidable if you establish a maintenance rhythm. Marine plumbing doesn't fail randomly. It fails because the rhythm was ignored.
And the sources map out a very clear preventative timeline for this. Like, if you are operating a standard saltwater setup, you need to flush the system with fresh water once a week to push the stagnant salt out of the lines.
Yes.
You perform the vinegar soak once a month to dissolve the invisible calcium scale before it hardens. And annually, and the guides treat this as an absolute non-negotiable law, you replace the joker valve and the heavily friction-worn seals.
Ideally right before winterization, so nothing freezes, expands, and cracks the housing.
Which brings up a really critical logistical point. The texts repeatedly hammer home this brilliant piece of advice. Keep a fully assembled spare pump and a complete rubber service kit physically on board the boat at all times.
Oh, 100%. The most experienced captains don't just rely on preventative maintenance, they rely on redundancy.
Because here's the reality of the situation. If you have the spare parts in your hand, diagnosing a bad joker valve and swapping it out takes roughly 30 minutes with a screwdriver.
Exactly. 30 minutes of focused, mildly unpleasant work versus completely abandoning a planned 2-week cruise, sailing back to a marina, and waiting days for a mechanic to source a $50 rubber valve.
It's a no-brainer.
When you frame it like that, carrying the spare kit is the most cost-effective insurance policy you can buy for a boat.
30 minutes is absolutely less time than it takes to convince your incredibly unamused guests that the sulfur smell wafting through the cabin isn't actually that bad.
Right.
Now, we've talked extensively about fighting the raw saltwater environment. All of this rhythm, all the vinegar, the lubrication, it is all necessary because raw saltwater is inherently aggressively destructive. It introduces those microscopic salt crystals that act like sandpaper on your internal O-rings.
It's harsh.
But the source material introduces a radical alternative. What if we stopped fighting the ocean? What if we could just change the rules of the game and eliminate the saltwater problem entirely?
You're referring to the freshwater conversion. It is, without exaggeration, a complete paradigm shift for marine plumbing.
So what does this all mean logistically? We're talking about taking a standard manual seawater toilet and converting it to pull from the boat's internal freshwater tanks instead of the ocean.
Right.
And the sources break down the installation, and it's surprisingly accessible. We're talking about roughly 2 hours of labor. You need basic hand tools, screwdrivers, hose clamps, maybe a heat gun for stubborn hoses, and you utilize a dedicated conversion kit.
Yeah, the text highlight kits manufactured by companies like Raritan, which essentially reroute the intake plumbing and add a specialized check valve to ensure the toilet water can never, ever back siphon into your drinking water supply.
Which is very
It's
important.
crucial.
So you spend 2 hours on a Saturday and you completely alter the chemical ecosystem of your plumbing. Why is this upgrade considered the Holy Grail?
Because it ruthlessly targets the biological and chemical root causes of almost every single issue we have discussed today. I mean, let's talk about the smell. Most boaters assume the infamous funky boat smell is human waste.
Yeah, truly.
But it usually isn't. When you use raw seawater to flush, you are sucking thousands of microscopic marine organisms, plankton, algae, microbes, straight into the intake hose. And when you leave the boat for the week, that seawater just sits in the dark, oxygen-starved pipes.
And all that microscopic marine life just dies.
Exactly. It dies, and anaerobic bacteria begin to decompose it. That decomposition process releases hydrogen sulfide gas,
Ah!
that toxic, sulfurous, rotten egg smell that hits you when you open the cabin door after a week away. That is decaying marine biology in your intake hose. By converting to fresh water, you stop introducing organic marine life into your pipes entirely. The biological decomposition completely ceases.
And you're also stopping the chemical calcification, right? Because calcium needs the salt to form those concrete-like scales on the flat valve.
Precisely. You immediately halt the introduction of raw salt. Without the salt acting as a catalyst and an abrasive, your calcium buildup drops dramatically.
That's amazing.
Your synthetic rubber seals are no longer being shredded by microscopic salt crystals every single time you pump the handle. You dramatically extend the lifespan of your entire pump assembly, and you essentially eradicate that deeply ingrained sulfurous holding tank odor.
Just by switching the water source.
This raises an important question for any boat owner listening. Are you willing to invest the cost of a conversion kit and 2 hours of sweaty labor this weekend to buy yourself literally years of odor-free, low-friction, low-maintenance boating?
I mean, when you calculate the compounding hours you save, not scrubbing calcified valves or constantly apologizing for the smell, the return on investment is staggering.
It really is the ultimate example of working smarter, not harder.
All right, we have covered a massive amount of mechanical and chemical ground today. Let's distill the absolute essentials from this deep dive so you can take this hidden knowledge right down to the bilge. Number 1. Ban the bleach and harsh household acids immediately. They are actively leaching the plasticizers out of your synthetic rubber seals and permanently etching your porcelain. Number 2. Embrace distilled white vinegar. Let that acetic acid sit for an hour to naturally dissolve the hard water scale without destroying your plumbing.
Yep.
Number 3. Respect the joker valve. Replace it annually, and strictly follow the Goldilocks rule of lubrication, a microfilm of Teflon marine grease on the shaft, silicone spray on the rubber, and absolutely never, ever let Vaseline near your system.
Ever.
And finally, if you truly want to win the war on maintenance, invest the 2 hours into the freshwater conversion upgrade. If you follow this specific playbook, your Jabsco toilet won't just survive the summer. The core system will easily last over a decade.
The entire philosophy shifts from reacting to gross emergencies to simply managing a highly predictable mechanical system. When you understand the specific material chemistry and the flow dynamics at play, you take total control over the environment.
It changes everything. Now, before we wrap this up, there was a deeply subtle detail buried in the back of the source's related catalog articles. It was a brief, almost throwaway mention regarding cleaning your vessel without harming lakes or rivers. And it sparked a thought process that I want to leave you with today. Throughout this entire discussion, we have been intensely focused on the micro level. We've been obsessing over how the caustic halogens in bleach or the acids in heavy-duty cleaners silently destroy the internal synthetic rubber seals of your boat's specific plumbing system.
Right.
But consider the macro level. Consider the final destination of that water once it eventually leaves your holding tank.
Oh, that's an incredibly vital connection that most people fail to make when they are frustrated and just want a clean bowl.
Think about the chemical reality of what we just discussed. If a common household cleaning gel is chemically aggressive enough to eat through a heavy-duty industrial-grade nitrile marine valve, What invisible compounding toll is that exact same chemical taking on the fragile aquatic ecosystems you are cruising through.
It's sobering.
The choices you make in the isolation of that tiny, cramped boat bathroom, the decision to reach for the natural acetic acid of vinegar instead of the nuclear option of bleach, might just ripple out much further than the borders of your own hull. So the next time you are facing down the dark underbelly of boating chores, remember, treating your boat's internal plumbing with a little more scientific respect just might be the most effective way to respect the water you love being out on.